you can't come at someone or something for its success. And I'm talking to myself here because I'm guilty of these things. You can't go after someone for their success out of, some like jealousy or whatever. That's just not really a fair thing to do. And I think that that narrative has, like you said, like sometimes, like eventually you said earlier, you said here's the narrative or whatever, and then eventually just is a thing. It's like we move on, So now that's moved on.
Let me say one thing in your defense, though.
Please.
I know it's funny. It's kind of this reversal of views. Let me say one thing in your defense. And in the defense of other people who have attacked Ripple unjustly, in their defense, there are a lot of scams in this space. I mean, outright, flat out scams. Yeah. And it can be very hard to tell what's an outright scam and what's not. And I could easily see how if you didn't put in an enormous amount of time understanding what Ripple is, you could think that it was one of those scams. So you could think the XRP ledger was a scam. And people say, do your own research, but like, have you tried to do your own research? I'll give you an example. I know this space very well. When the Bitcoin Cash split started to happen, I did my own research. I spent an entire day reading like all sides of the issue to try to figure out what was going on. And I came out probably more confused than I started.
Oh, yeah,
so like
confused about scaling.
Right. So saying do your own research is not very helpful. It's very difficult. Most people can't do it. And saying, well, ignore something that might be an outright scam. Like there are outright scams that are robbing people of money. And if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, like those scams are hurting Bitcoin because, anything bad about the industry is bad for Bitcoin. And so I am sympathetic to people who feel like they need to call out scams and who will sometimes call out as scams things that aren't scams because it's not easy to tell. So I'm more sympathetic perhaps than I should be to people who have unjustly attacked.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And a lot of things are very complicated to explain. And I think it was because that all these things were increasing in value so much. I remember having a guy that I was in jail with just called me out of the blue, and he's like, I want to buy Bitcoin and Ripple. And I just remember saying to myself, out of all the things, or Bitcoin XRP, and I said, of all the things, like, just why that? And he said, well, Bitcoin is great, and XRP is the next Bitcoin. And I said, well, I don't even understand what that means. What is the next? So it was the fact that people weren't even willing to do their own research, and then that got me so nervous because at least with Bitcoin, because I'm so invested in it, that if it fails, then at least I fail with that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, doing your own research is just hard. Yeah. It's like everybody says, do your own research. How many people can't? I mean, if I couldn't on several issues where I was, things that I'm very deeply personally involved with, obviously it's easier for me to figure out what's going on. But like with things that I don't have a personal connection to, it's almost impossible to figure out where is the real innovation, where's the real, work happening, what's real and what's completely fake. You'll see in this industry a lot of press releases with zero follow-up. Like you'll see this press release of this cryptocurrency is working with this major company on this big thing. And then there's literally nothing. Like a year can go by and there's literally nothing heard about that. And to be fair, when we do a press release, it's fair for people to say well, okay, it's a press release. Yes, you got this other financial institution to sign on to the press release, but maybe all the financial institution wanted was a press release because sometimes that is all they want. So that kind of criticism is fair. And you do your own research. Well, you find a press release and it says they're building something. How skeptical?
That's a good point. Yeah,
it's hard. It's a hard industry to understand what's going on. So I'm sympathetic to people who get it wrong, and I hope that people will be sympathetic with me when I get it wrong because I have the same problem. Outside of the people who I interact with on a regular basis very directly, it's hard for me to figure out what's going on.